After 30 years being impotent, the CEO begged her, "Give me a baby, I'll give you everything, even my empire." Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to our sacred home of storytelling. I hope you're doing well today. How did you enjoy our previous story about the arrogant millionaire who ruined a dying girl's last wish? You know, your comments truly warmed my heart. Each like, each share, each thoughtful message you leave, they're not just numbers to me, they are fuel for my soul. They remind me why I spend countless hours researching and crafting these stories for you. Your engagement is what keeps this family alive, what keeps me going even when the nights grow long. Thank you for being the most incredible audience anyone could ask for. Before we dive into today's powerful story, let's take a moment to say a brief word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for my beloved family gathered here today. These precious souls who take time from their busy lives to join me on this journey of storytelling. Lord, please place your gentle hand of blessing upon each viewer. Guard their health, strengthen their spirits, and surround them with your unfailing love. Whatever struggles they face today, whatever mountains stand before them, I pray you make a way where there seems to be no way. Fill their homes with peace, their hearts with hope, and their lives with purpose. May they feel your presence now and always. Whether they're watching during a dark night or hopeful morning, may this moment we share bring light to their day. Amen. My dear viewers, tonight as I was preparing this story, I stayed up until 3 a.m. perfecting every detail. Because your messages about how these stories have touched your lives fuel my passion beyond what you could ever know. Tonight, we witness a powerful man brought to his knees by the simplest human yearning to create a family, to leave a legacy of love rather than brick and mortar. His journey will test the boundaries between transaction and true connection, between control and surrender. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin this story of how the mighty can fall in love, in hope, and in transformation. In the gleaming steel and glass towers of Boston's medical district stood Sterling Memorial Hospital, a monument to one man's vision and determination. At the very top floor, in an office larger than most people's homes, Marcus Sterling reviewed the quarterly projections with cold precision. At 58, his silver hair was impeccably styled, his custom Italian suit worth more than what most of his employees made in a month. "These numbers from the West Wing renovation are unacceptable," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The hospital board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. No one dared interrupt when Marcus Sterling was displeased. "We're $3 million over budget and 2 months behind schedule," he continued, pacing behind his massive desk crafted from a single slab of rare marble. "This is the premier cardiac care facility on the East Coast, not some community clinic cutting corners." The youngest board member attempted to explain about supply chain issues and unexpected structural problems, but Marcus waved him away. "I don't want excuses. I want solutions. Have a complete revision of the timeline and budget on my desk by tomorrow morning." His tone made it clear that the meeting was over. As the board members filed out, Marcus turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he'd conquered. Boston spread before him like a kingdom, the Charles River gleaming in the afternoon sun. From this height, people looked like ants, scurrying about their insignificant lives. His assistant, Patricia, entered quietly after knocking. After 20 years, she was one of the few people who could read his moods. "Your dinner reservation at Menton has been confirmed for 7, and I've rescheduled tomorrow's investor call to accommodate the budget review," she said efficiently. "Cancel the dinner," Marcus replied, not turning from the window. "I'll take the reports home instead." Patricia nodded, used to his last-minute changes. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Sterling?" "No, that's all." When she left, the silence of the office enveloped him again. Rows of awards and recognitions lined the walls: the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, multiple healthcare innovation prizes, his honorary degrees from Harvard and Johns Hopkins. Testaments to a life of extraordinary achievement. Yet none of them spoke back to him in the emptiness of evening. Across the hospital complex, in a wing filled with colorful murals and gentle lighting, Melody Jenkins sat cross-legged on the floor of the pediatric oncology playroom. At 35, she carried herself with a grace that spoke of her former life as a concert musician. Her curly dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her clothes were practical but brightened by a scarf patterned with musical notes. "Today we're going to feel the music in our bodies," she explained to the circle of children around her. Some were in wheelchairs, others trailing for poles, all wearing the weary expression of kids who had seen too many hospital rooms. "When we make music together, we create healing vibrations." She placed a small hand drum in front of a boy who couldn't have been more than 7, his head wrapped in a colorful bandana. "Jamie, can you feel the drum skin under your fingers? That's it. Now give it a gentle tap." The boy produced a soft beat, his face lighting up at the sound. "Beautiful. Now everyone join in when you feel ready. There's no wrong way to play." Soon the room filled with an impromptu percussion symphony. Melody moved among the children, guiding, encouraging, sometimes just witnessing their joy in creation. For many, it was the first time they'd smiled all day. After the session, Dr. Levine, the head of pediatric oncology, stopped her in the hallway. "That was remarkable," he said. "Jamie's mother told me it's the most engaged he's been since starting this round of treatment." Melody nodded, packing her instruments carefully into their cases. Music bypasses our defenses. It speaks directly to something deeper than our conscious mind. "You know, before you started this program, I was skeptical," the doctor admitted. "But the improvement in patient outcomes has been measurable." "That's what converted me too," Melody replied with a warm smile. "I was devoted to classical performance until my accident. I never imagined I'd find something more fulfilling." She flexed her left hand unconsciously, the slight stiffness in her fingers a permanent reminder of the car crash that had ended her performing career 8 years ago. 3 surgeries and years of physical therapy had restored most functionality, but the subtle control needed for professional-level flute performance remained just beyond reach. "We're lucky that life redirected you to us," Dr. Levine said. "By the way, the new music therapy room should be ready next month. The construction crew is working on the final details." Melody brightened. "That's wonderful news. I've been dreaming of a dedicated space since I started here. Until then, keep working your magic wherever you can find space," he said, before being called away to a patient. Gathering her cases, Melody consulted her schedule. She had a session in the children's surgical recovery ward in 20 minutes, on the opposite side of the massive hospital complex. Usually, she navigated the maze of corridors and elevators with practiced ease, but today construction barriers blocked her usual route. Consulting a wall map, she spotted what looked like a shortcut through the administrative section. It would save her at least 10 minutes, and she could use the extra time to set up properly. As she hummed quietly to herself, working out a new melody for tomorrow's group session, Melody turned down an unfamiliar corridor. The atmosphere changed immediately, gone were the friendly colors and accessible design of the patient areas. Here, everything was sleek, minimalist, expensive. The floors changed from practical linoleum to marble, the lighting from warm to cool. She realized she must have taken a wrong turn, but figured she could cut through and find her way back to familiar territory. As she rounded a corner, rolling her instrument case behind her, she nearly collided with a tall figure emerging from a conference room. "Excuse me, this area is restricted," said a commanding voice. Melody looked up into the stern face of a man she immediately recognized from the hospital promotional materials and news reports, though they'd never met in person. Marcus Sterling himself. "I apologize," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "I was looking for a shortcut to the surgical recovery ward. The construction on the third floor blocked my usual route." Marcus Sterling studied her with cool assessment. Few people apologize so simply, without nervous rambling, when confronted by him. "You're in the executive wing," he stated. "Hospital personnel should know better than to wander through private areas." Instead of looking intimidated, Melody raised an eyebrow slightly. The map showed this as a through corridor. Perhaps it needs updating for the construction period. Marcus noticed her ID badge. "You're with music therapy? I wasn't aware we had such a department." "We've been operating for 3 years now," Melody replied. "Though departments might be overstating it. It's mostly just me and some volunteers, plus whatever instruments people donate." Something in her direct manner intrigued him. Most employees became flustered in his presence, eager to please or afraid to misspeak. This woman simply spoke to him as she might to anyone else. "And this is effective? Music as therapy?" he asked, genuine curiosity tempering his usual dismissiveness. "Extremely," Melody said with quiet confidence. "We've documented reduced anxiety levels, lower pain medication requirements, and faster recovery times, particularly in pediatric patients. I'd be happy to share our outcomes data." Marcus glanced at his watch. "Perhaps another time. The surgical recovery ward is through those doors, left at the water fountain, then down the elevator to the second floor." "Thank you," Melody said, moving to continue her journey. She paused, then added, "You know, most people think hospitals are just about medical procedures and technology. But healing happens when we address the whole person, mind, body, and spirit." With that, she continued down the corridor, the wheels of her instrument case making a rhythmic sound against the marble floor. Marcus Sterling stood motionless, watching her leave. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him not as the intimidating CEO, the billionaire benefactor, or the demanding boss, but simply as another human being with ideas worth considering. "What was the therapist's name?" he asked his assistant later that afternoon. Patricia consulted her tablet. "Melody Jenkins. She's been with us just over 3 years. Excellent performance reviews, popular with patients and staff. Graduated from Juilliard originally. Came to us after retraining in music therapy following a career-ending injury. Send me her department's budget and outcome reports," Marcus said, turning back to his computer. "Of course," Patricia replied, hiding her surprise. It was unusual for Mr. Sterling to take interest in such a small program. As evening fell and Marcus rode the private elevator to the parking garage where his driver waited, he found himself still thinking about the encounter. About dark curly hair and direct eyes that didn't flinch under his gaze. About someone who saw his hospital not as a business enterprise but as a place of healing that extended beyond the physical. It had been a long time since anyone had made Marcus Sterling curious about anything beyond his empire's expansion. A very long time indeed. 3 weeks later, Melody was setting up for her morning session in the pediatric playroom when she felt a presence in the doorway. Turning, she was startled to see Marcus Sterling observing silently. Mr. Sterling, she acknowledged with a nod, continuing to arrange instruments in a circle. Is there something I can help you with? I've been reviewing your program data, he replied, stepping into the room but remaining near the wall. Your outcomes are impressive. Melody smiled slightly. Thank you. Though I suspect impressive from you is high praise indeed. I don't offer compliments lightly, he confirmed. Would you mind if I observe today's session? The board is considering expanded funding for integrative care programs, and I'd like to see your methods firsthand. Of course, Melody said, gesturing to a chair in the corner. Though I should warn you, we get rather enthusiastic. You might want to remove your jacket. Marcus hesitated, then carefully removed his tailored suit jacket and draped it over the chair. When he sat, his perfect posture and crisp white shirt still marked him as distinctly out of place among the colorful children's furniture. As the young patients began arriving, Melody noted how their eyes widened at the imposing visitor but focused on making them comfortable. Today we're exploring how music tells stories without words, she explained, selecting a small wooden xylophone. For the next hour, Marcus watched as Melody guided children through creating sound landscapes that expressed their emotions. A 10-year-old girl with leukemia played haunting bell tones that somehow conveyed both sadness and hope. A boy recovering from brain surgery beat a steady, determined rhythm on a drum. What struck Marcus most was how Melody spoke to each child as an equal participant in creation rather than as patients to be managed. When a 7-year-old named Lewis became frustrated trying to play a small guitar with his IV-tethered arm, Melody knelt beside him. Music isn't about perfection, she said gently. It's about expression. What if we try something different? To Marcus's surprise, she glanced his way. Mr. Sterling, would you mind helping Lewis for a moment? Before he could formulate a reason to decline, Marcus found himself crossing the room under the curious gaze of a dozen children. Melody handed him a simple egg shaker. If you could create a steady rhythm, Lewis can strum when his arm doesn't hurt. You'll be a team. Marcus couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him to be part of a team rather than lead one. Awkwardly, he began shaking the egg in a basic pattern. Lewis giggled at his stiffness. Like this, the boy demonstrated, moving his good arm with natural rhythm. Loose, not tight. Something about the child's straightforward instruction cut through decades of boardroom formality. Marcus relaxed his wrist, creating a smoother sound. Lewis beamed and began strumming simple chords in time with the shaker. When the session ended, Marcus lingered, watching Melody efficiently pack away instruments while chatting warmly with the nurses. Thank you for your participation, she said when they were alone. I think you made Lewis's day. I wasn't expecting to be drafted as a performer, Marcus replied, a hint of amusement softening his usually stern expression. Sometimes the best way to understand something is to experience it directly, Melody said. That's what music therapy is about, direct experience of emotional states that might otherwise remain locked inside. I see that now, Marcus admitted. Your budget request for additional instruments is approved, by the way. Have your department head submit the paperwork. I am the department head, Melody laughed. But thank you. The children will be thrilled. Over the following months, Marcus became a regular, if unexpected, visitor to the music therapy program. Hospital staff whispered about the dramatic change, the fearsome CEO who once communicated mainly through memos now appearing in pediatric wards, observing therapy sessions with intense focus. He actually smiled yesterday, a nurse confided to her colleague. When that little rosy girl played the tambourine for him. I nearly fainted. By spring, Marcus and Melody had established a professional rhythm. After her Thursday sessions, they would meet in his office to discuss hospital operations from a perspective he'd never considered, that of patients' emotional experience. The surgical waiting area is clinically efficient, Melody pointed out during one meeting, but it feels cold to families in crisis. Simple changes, softer lighting, privacy screens, perhaps even gentle background music, could reduce anxiety levels substantially. Instead of dismissing such soft concerns as he might have months ago, Marcus took detailed notes. The following week, he had his design team draft renovation plans incorporating her suggestions. Their weekly meetings gradually extended from their scheduled 30 minutes to sometimes lasting hours. Marcus found himself sharing details of hospital politics and financial challenges he typically guarded closely. The new insurance regulations are squeezing smaller departments, he explained one evening as they reviewed budget allocations. We may need to consolidate certain services. But not at the expense of patient care, Melody countered, unafraid to challenge his assumptions. Sometimes the smallest programs have the most significant impact on recovery outcomes. Marcus studied her thoughtfully. You never hesitate to speak your mind, do you? Would you prefer I didn't? She asked, holding his gaze. Quite the opposite. It's refreshing. He paused. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. The spring air drifted through the open window of his office as evening settled over Boston. The formality between them had gradually dissolved, replaced by something resembling friendship, or perhaps something more complex neither was ready to name. I've been meaning to ask, Melody said, gathering her notes as their meeting concluded. Why a hospital? Of all the empires you could have built, why healthcare? Marcus was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice held an unfamiliar vulnerability. My grandfather was a country doctor in western Massachusetts. House calls, payment in chicken sometimes. He saved for years to send my father to medical school. Marcus stood, walking to the window. I was expected to be the third-generation physician. But I discovered I had more talent for business than bedside manner. So you built hospitals instead of practicing in them, Melody observed. Yes. Though my wife never understood that distinction. The word seemed to surprise even him, as though he hadn't intended to mention her. Melody carefully set down her pen. I didn't realize you were married. I'm not. Not anymore. His shoulders tensed slightly. Elizabeth left 15 years ago. The pain in those simple words hung in the air between them. Melody sensed there was much more to the story, something that had shaped the controlled, isolated man before her. I'm sorry, she said simply. Marcus turned from the window, his expression composed once more. It was a long time ago. He glanced at his watch. It's getting late. I've kept you well past working hours. As Melody gathered her things to leave, Marcus spoke again, his tone deliberately lighter. The board has approved your proposal for a dedicated music therapy center, by the way. Construction begins next month. Melody's eyes widened. The full proposal? With the recording studio for the teens and the sensory room for younger children. Yes, he said, a rare smile warming his features at her evident joy. All of it. In the doorway, Melody paused. Thank you, Marcus, she said, using his first name for the first time. This will change lives. I believe it already has, he replied quietly, their eyes meeting in a moment of connection that transcended their professional roles. As Melody walked away, neither acknowledged the subtle shift that had occurred. Something had changed between them, something neither was ready to define but both could feel, like a new melody emerging note by note. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Marcus had been reviewing acquisition documents for a struggling rural hospital when his private line rang. "Mr. Sterling, I apologize for the late hour," Dr. Williams said, his voice heavy. "There's been a situation with Luis Mendez." Marcus felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Luis, the boy with the infectious laugh who had taught him to shake an egg rattle months ago. "What happened?" he asked, already reaching for his coat. "His condition deteriorated rapidly. We've moved him to PICU. His parents are here, but—" The doctor hesitated. "He's been asking for the music lady and, surprisingly, for you as well." 20 minutes later, Marcus strode through the hospital's night-quiet corridors. When he reached pediatric intensive care, he found Melody already there, her hair hastily pulled back, wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She'd clearly rushed from home just as he had. "How is he?" Marcus asked softly. Melody's eyes were rimmed with red. "Not good. The infection spread to his bloodstream. They're trying everything, but—" They stood side by side at the window to Luis's room, watching the medical team work with urgent precision around the small figure on the bed. Marcus had negotiated billion-dollar deals, faced down corporate rivals, weathered economic crashes, yet he had never felt more helpless than in this moment. "His parents asked if we would sit with him for a while," Melody said. "They need a moment to call family members." Inside the room, behind masks and hospital gowns, they took positions on either side of Luis's bed. The boy's eyes fluttered open at their presence. "You came," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the machines. "Of course we did, brave one," Melody said, gently taking his hand. "Can you all play something?" Luis asked. Melody reached into her bag and pulled out a small ocean drum. "This one is special," she told him. "It sounds like waves at the beach." As she tilted the drum softly, creating gentle rushing sounds, Luis turned his gaze to Marcus. "You have to help too." Marcus hesitated, then carefully accepted the egg shaker a nurse passed to him. He began creating the rhythm that Luis had taught him months before. For 15 precious minutes, they made quiet music together as machines beeped and medication dripped. Then Luis's eyes closed, his breathing became more labored, and doctors gently asked them to step out. 3 hours later, as dawn broke over Boston, Luis Mendez passed away with his parents at his side. Marcus found Melody in the small garden courtyard hidden within the hospital complex. She sat on a bench, still holding the ocean drum in her lap, tears flowing freely down her face. Without hesitation, he sat beside her and did something he couldn't remember doing since childhood. He wept. They sat in shared grief as the sky lightened. When they could finally speak, their voices were raw with emotion. "Does it ever get easier?" Marcus asked. "Losing them?" "No," Melody answered honestly. "You just learn to carry it differently." Marcus looked down at his hands. "I never wanted to feel this way again. This powerless." "Again?" Melody asked gently. The wall he'd maintained for decades cracked open. "When I was 28, I had surgery for testicular cancer," he said, the words coming with difficulty. "The operation saved my life but left me with permanent nerve damage. The doctors called it erectile dysfunction, but that clinical term doesn't capture what it really means. He stood, needing to move as he spoke. For 30 years, I've been impotent. Completely. Various treatments, experimental procedures, nothing worked. Marcus, I'm so sorry, Melody said softly. Elizabeth and I were planning to start a family when I was diagnosed. She stayed through the treatment, the recovery. She said it didn't matter. His voice grew bitter. But of course it did. How could it not? She wanted children. I couldn't give her that. She left you because of your condition? Melody asked. Not officially. She cited irreconcilable differences. But I saw how she looked at families, at babies. The longing in her eyes. He turned back to Melody. After she left, I threw myself into building Sterling Memorial. If I couldn't create a family, I would create something else meaningful. The morning light illuminated his face, revealing a vulnerability few had ever witnessed. The bitter irony is that I've helped build one of the best maternal and pediatric care systems in the country, yet I can never have children of my own. Melody was quiet for a long moment before speaking. I understand that grief more than you might think. She looked up at the lightening sky. I was engaged once, to a fellow musician. We talked about having a family after we'd both established our careers. Then came my accident. She flexed her scarred hand. During my recovery, I became obsessed with regaining my performance ability. The relationship couldn't withstand my single-minded focus. By the time I accepted my concert career was over and found my way to music therapy, he was married to someone else with the family we'd planned to have together. Her gaze met Marcus's. These children, Lewis, all of them, they've become my family in a way. Not a replacement for what might have been, but a different kind of love. Marcus sat beside her again. I've spent decades avoiding emotional connection. It seemed safer. And now? Melody asked quietly. Now I find myself caring deeply about a boy who just left this world, he said, his voice breaking. And about the woman who taught him, and me, what healing truly means. In the quiet garden, as hospital staff began arriving for the morning shift, something profound passed between them. Not just shared grief, but recognition. Two people who had lost their expected futures, finding unexpected connection in the present. Marcus reached out, hesitantly taking Melody's hand in his. She interlaced her fingers with his, neither needing words to express what was growing between them, fragile, unexpected, and undeniably real. My beautiful family, I need to pause our story for a moment. This scene between Marcus and Melody touches something deep within us all, doesn't it? I wonder, have you ever connected with someone through shared pain? That moment when vulnerability creates a bridge between two souls? When the walls we build come down, and raw, honest emotion allows us to truly see each other. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories of connection through difficult times might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. Remember, your engagement doesn't just support this family, it creates a community where we all feel less alone in our struggles. Now, let's return to Marcus and Melody as their relationship begins to transform. In the weeks following Lewis's memorial service, something shifted between Marcus and Melody. What began as shared grief gradually transformed into a deeper connection, evident in small but meaningful ways. Marcus started finding reasons to leave his office during Melody's therapy sessions. The board members noticed his chair often empty during afternoon meetings, While nurses grew accustomed to seeing the intimidating CEO sitting cross-legged on the floor with pediatric patients, his expensive suits exchanged for more casual attire on what staff now called his music days. "You've got everyone talking," Patricia commented one morning as she handed him his schedule. "Let them talk," Marcus replied simply, something his assistant never thought she'd hear from a man who once monitored his reputation with military precision. For Melody, the change in Marcus revealed itself in countless small discoveries. She learned he had a dry, unexpected sense of humor that emerged when he relaxed. She discovered his encyclopedic knowledge of classical music, a childhood passion before business consumed his life. Most surprisingly, she found a man willing to listen and learn, his natural authority balanced by newfound humility. Boston in summer became the backdrop to their evolving relationship. One evening after work, they strolled along the Charles River Esplanade, watching scullers glide across the water as the sun set. "I've lived in this city for 30 years, Marcus mused, "and I can't remember the last time I just walked like this, with no particular destination." Melody smiled, her hand brushing against his. "Some of the best journeys have no predetermined ending." He took her hand gently, their fingers intertwining as naturally as if they'd been doing it for years. Their outings became a weekly tradition. They explored the cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill, where Marcus pointed out architectural details most people never noticed. They visited the Boston Public Garden, where Melody insisted they ride the swan boats like tourists, Marcus initially resistant but ultimately laughing as they paddled across the lagoon. At the Museum of Fine Arts, they discovered a mutual love for Impressionist paintings. "They remind me of music," Melody explained, studying a Monet landscape. "The way individual notes, or brushstrokes, might seem imprecise up close, but create something beautiful when experienced as a whole." "I've always been too focused on the details," Marcus admitted. "Seeing the bigger picture doesn't come naturally to me." "Perhaps that's why we complement each other," Melody suggested, her eyes meeting his. The hospital community watched their relationship unfold with fascination. The notorious workaholic who once required his assistant to schedule bathroom breaks now left the office at reasonable hours. The feared executive who made junior staff tremble now stopped to chat with janitors about their families. "You've changed him," Dr. Levine told Melody one afternoon after Marcus personally delivered art supplies to the pediatric ward. "We've changed each other," she corrected gently. This truth revealed itself in countless ways. While Marcus learned to open his heart, Melody found herself embracing aspects of his methodical nature. She began documenting her therapy techniques more rigorously, collaborating with research staff to quantify outcomes. Together, they co-authored a paper for a medical journal on music intervention in pediatric care, her creative approach enhanced by his analytical precision. As the music therapy center neared completion, Marcus surprised Melody by showing her, in addition to the plans, a small recital hall for patient performances. "The contractors just finished it yesterday," he explained, leading her into the intimate space with perfect acoustics. "I thought the children deserved a proper venue to showcase their progress." In the center of the room stood a beautiful grand piano. "This isn't just for the children, is it?" Melody asked, running her fingers lightly over the polished surface. "I may have had an ulterior motive," Marcus admitted. "I haven't heard you truly play, and not as the musician you were trained to be." The room was twilit, Boston's lights beginning to glimmer through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Melody sat at the piano bench, suddenly nervous. "My technique isn't what it once was," she warned, flexing her scarred hand. "I'm not here as a critic," Marcus said, sitting in a chair nearby. "I'm here as someone who wants to know all parts of you, including the performer you were before we met." Melody began hesitantly, playing a simple Bach prelude. As she relaxed, she transitioned to Debussy, her fingers finding their way through Clair de Lune with a thoughtfulness that technical perfection could never match. Finally, she played something original, a piece she'd composed during her recovery but never performed for anyone. When she finished, Marcus was beside her, his eyes reflecting emotion he once would have hidden. "That was beautiful," he said softly. "You found a way to turn your pain into something transcendent." "Music has always been my way through difficult times," she replied, looking up at him. "It speaks when words fail." The tension between them had been building for weeks. Now, in this private moment surrounded by music, Marcus leaned down but giving her enough space to turn away, but surprisingly Melody reached up. Their lips meeting gently, questioning, then deepened with the certainty of something both had been waiting for without realizing it. When they finally parted, the connection between them had unmistakably changed, boundaries crossed that could never be re-established. Later that evening, as Marcus walked to his car after seeing Melody safely to hers, his phone rang. The screen displayed Dr. Abrams, Boston Reproductive Center. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Mr. Sterling? I have promising news about the experimental treatment we discussed. Recent trials show higher success rates than we initially projected. If you're still interested, I'd like to schedule you for a consultation next week." Marcus first watched Melody's taillights disappear around the corner before responding. "Yes, I'm interested. Send the details to my private email." He ended the call, his mind racing with possibilities he hadn't dared consider for decades, and with the knowledge that he wasn't ready to share this fragile hope with Melody. Not yet. Marcus spent the next 3 days preparing for the dinner that would change everything. His penthouse, usually sterile and impersonal, transformed under his careful attention. Candles flickered on surfaces, softening the sharp edges of modern design. A fire burned in the rarely used fireplace, casting warm shadows across the room. He'd spent an hour with the florist, selecting each bouquet based on Melody's favorite colors. "Mr. Sterling, shall I serve champagne when Ms. Jenkins arrives?" his private chef asked, arranging the appetizers. "Yes, the Cru Grande Cuve," Marcus replied, adjusting silverware already perfectly placed while calling Melody to confirm she didn't forget his invitation. "Make everything perfect, then give us privacy," he added. When Melody entered that evening, she paused at the threshold. The transformation struck her immediately. This was the same space he described as a museum of corporate success, now radiating intimacy. "Marcus, this is..." She trailed off, taking in the details. "I wanted tonight to be special," he said, helping her with her coat. His hands lingered briefly on her shoulders, and she sensed an unfamiliar nervousness beneath his composed exterior. The view from the dining table showcased Boston at twilight, the harbor reflecting city lights like scattered jewels. Throughout the meal, Marcus seemed distracted, refilling glasses too frequently, his usual measured conversation punctuated by moments of loaded silence. "Is everything all right?" Melody finally asked as the main course was cleared. "You seem preoccupied." Marcus stood abruptly, walking to the window. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've been keeping from you since we met." Melody's heart quickened. In the months they'd grown close, she'd learned to read his moods. This was neither anger nor sadness, but something more complex, a fusion of hope and fear. "Remember when I told you about my medical condition?" he began, still facing the window. How all treatments had failed over 3 decades. Yes, of course. He turned to face her. 6 months ago, a specialist from Johns Hopkins contacted me about an experimental procedure being developed in Switzerland. Gene therapy combined with stem cell regeneration. The initial trials show remarkable results for cases like mine. Melody listened, confused about why this information warranted such gravity. I've been corresponding with Dr. Abrams at Boston Reproductive Center, Marcus continued. They believe I'm an excellent candidate. The treatment could potentially restore my fertility. That's wonderful news, Melody said cautiously, noting the tension still evident in his posture. There's more. He returned to the table, sitting across from her. The treatment has a limited window of effectiveness. My age, combined with the duration of my condition, means it's now or never. If I undergo the procedure in the next 3 months, there's a chance, small, but real, that I could father a child. Understanding began to dawn on Melody, but she waited for him to continue. Melody, in the time I've known you, you've changed everything I thought I wanted from life. You've shown me what real connection means, what actually matters. His hands were trembling slightly. I've never felt this way before, never believed I could have both love and the possibility of a family. He reached across the table, taking her hands in his. Give me a baby, he said suddenly, his voice raw with desperation. I'll give you everything. Even my empire. The words hung in the air like a cracked note in a symphony. Melody remained silent as Marcus continued, his carefully rehearsed speech spilling out. The Melody Jenkins Institute for Healing Arts, we could create it together. Research foundations, scholarships, whatever you want. The entire sterling fortune could support your mission of bringing music to those who need healing. She slowly withdrew her hands from his. Marcus, what exactly are you proposing? A partnership, he said, misinterpreting her calm tone. Both personal and professional. We marry, have a child while science offers this miracle, and together we transform healthcare across America. You'd have unlimited resources to expand your work. Stop, Melody interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut through his mounting enthusiasm. Please stop talking about resources and foundations. She stood, needing distance from the table, from him. You're offering me your empire in exchange for pregnancy. Is that what this dinner was about? No, that's not. Marcus stood as well, suddenly aware of how badly he'd miscalculated. I'm asking you to share my life, to build something meaningful together. By treating childbearing as a transaction. Melody's voice was heavy with hurt. By putting a monetary value on creating life. I didn't mean it like that. Marcus reached for her, but she stepped back. I just wanted to show you how committed I am, how much I can offer. Love isn't about what you can offer. Melody's eyes filled with tears. It's not a business deal where you trade wealth for offspring. Did you really think I'd agree to be your breeding vessel because you'd fund some music programs? The word stung Marcus like a physical blow. That's not fair. You know my history, my struggles. This might be my only chance. At what? Checking off the last box on your success list. Melody was crying openly now. All these months, I thought you understood. I thought we were building something real, based on mutual respect and genuine affection. We were. We are. Marcus's composure cracked entirely. Why can't it be both? Why can't we have love and create the family I've always wanted? Because real love doesn't come with price tags and conditions, Melody answered, gathering her purse. You can't buy a family like you buy companies, Marcus. Hearts don't work that way. Don't leave, he pleaded, following her to the door. Let me explain better. I handled this wrong, I know, but please. You didn't handle it wrong, Melody said, turning to face him one last time. You revealed that you see me as an asset to acquire, not a partner to cherish. After everything we've shared, I thought you knew the difference. Melody, please, Marcus's voice broke. Don't throw away what we have over one mistake. It's not one mistake, Marcus. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what love is. She opened the door. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I won't be bought, even with the currency of dreams. The door closed with devastating finality. Marcus stood alone in his beautifully decorated penthouse, the candles still burning, the champagne going flat in crystal flutes. Through his window, he watched Melody's figure emerge on the street below, growing smaller with each step away from him. For the first time in decades, Marcus Sterling felt the true weight of loss, not of business opportunities or financial setbacks, but something far more precious. As tears blurred his vision, he finally understood that there were some things his empire could never purchase, some wounds that wealth could never heal. Melody, walking through Boston's night streets with mascara tracing paths down her cheeks, felt her heart breaking in ways she hadn't thought possible. She believed she'd found someone who saw her for who she truly was, only to discover she'd been evaluated as a potential return on investment. In that moment, both realized that sometimes the most valuable things slip away because we try to grasp them with the wrong hands, his reaching with checkbooks instead of honesty, hers recoiling from a love tainted by transaction. The city hummed around them, indifferent to two hearts breaking in its shadow. 2 weeks passed like a grey blur of motion without meaning. Marcus found himself staring at spreadsheets without comprehension, attending meetings where words flowed around him like water around stone. The hospital continued functioning with ruthless efficiency, yet its CEO wandered the halls like a ghost of his former self. Mr. Sterling. Patricia's voice penetrated his fog as he gazed unseeingly at his computer screen. The Boston Children's Foundation called again about your attendance at their gala. Cancel it, he said hollowly. Cancel everything that isn't essential. Patricia hesitated. Sir, you were supposed to present their philanthropy award. It's named after you. Marcus finally looked up, seeing concern in his assistant's eyes. Then tell them I'm indisposed. Tell them anything. In his penthouse each night, he replayed the disastrous dinner over and over. The candles he'd carefully selected still sat, unlit, in their holders. The champagne bottle remained where he'd abandoned it, a monument to his miscalculation. For the first time, his wealth felt not like armor but like chains, weighing down every attempt at genuine connection. One evening, after dismissing his driver, Marcus walked through the now-completed music therapy center. Melody's touch was evident everywhere, in the careful selection of instruments, the thoughtful arrangement of spaces for different therapeutic needs, the bright artwork chosen to lift spirits. In the recital hall where they'd shared their first kiss, he sat at the piano, his fingers hovering over keys he didn't know how to play. I thought success could buy happiness, he whispered to the empty room. I was wrong about everything that matters. Across the hospital, Melody maintained a facade of normalcy that was crumbling daily. She arrived early, left late, and filled every moment between with intense therapy sessions. Her colleagues noticed the shadows under her eyes, the tremor in her usually steady hands, but she deflected all concern with forced smiles. You're pushing yourself too hard, Dr. Levine warned after finding her preparing materials at 6 a.m. for the third day running. This pace isn't sustainable. The children need consistency, Melody replied, arranging percussion instruments with mechanical precision. Their healing doesn't stop because I'm. She swallowed the word heartbroken and substituted busy. During sessions, she still created magic with music, but something essential had dimmed. The spontaneous joy that once characterized her work now required conscious effort. She avoided the executive wing entirely, taking circuitous routes to prevent any chance encounter with Marcus. But her body, stressed by emotional turmoil and physical exhaustion, was sending warnings she chose to ignore. Persistent nausea she attributed to cafeteria food. Fatigue she blamed on poor sleep. An unusual bloating she dismissed as stress-related. The crisis came during a Wednesday afternoon session with children from the oncology ward. Melody was demonstrating a rhythm exercise when a wave of dizziness swept over her. The room tilted, instruments blurred, and she heard a child's worried voice calling her name before darkness claimed her. She woke in a hospital bed, surrounded by concerned faces. Dr. Levine stood beside her, chart in hand, his expression grave. "Melody, we've run some tests," he began gently. "I've asked Dr. Anderson from oncology to consult." The words oncology and consult penetrated her haze like ice water. "What's wrong with me?" Dr. Anderson, a woman Melody had worked with on patient cases, stepped forward. "The scans show a mass on your right ovary. Given its size and characteristics, we need to operate immediately." "Cancer." Melody's voice was barely a whisper. "Stage 3, we believe. It's grown quite large." Dr. Anderson placed a comforting hand on her arm. "The good news is we caught it before it spread to other organs. But we need to be aggressive." As medical terminology washed over her, surgical approach, chemotherapy options, survival rates, Melody felt detached, as if watching someone else's nightmare. Then Dr. Anderson's words cut through her shock. "Melody, I need to be direct. Given the cancer's advancement, we'll need to perform a total hysterectomy. You won't be able to have biological children after this surgery." The cruel irony struck her like a physical blow. The very possibility she'd rejected from Marcus, bearing a child, was now being stolen from her completely. Hot tears spilled down her cheeks as the reality settled in. "When?" she managed to ask. "Tomorrow morning," Dr. Anderson replied. "The sooner, the better." 30 minutes later, Marcus burst through the door of her room, his face ashen. Word had reached him through the hospital grapevine, despite attempts to keep her condition private. "Melody," he said, stopping abruptly when he saw her lying there, looking small and vulnerable in the hospital gown. "You shouldn't be here," she said, but without conviction. "Don't ask me to leave," he replied, moving to her bedside. "Please." Something in his broken voice made her nod. He pulled a chair close, reaching for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Not just for that night, but for everything. For thinking I could quantify what's priceless, for trying to negotiate love like a business deal." Melody's tears flowed freely now. "The doctors said, after the surgery, I won't be able to have children." Marcus's grip on her hand tightened. "Oh, Melody. It's ironic, isn't it?" She gave a bitter laugh that turned into a sob. "You offered me everything for a child, and now I'll never have one regardless." To her surprise, Marcus released her hand only to gather her into his arms as much as the hospital bed would allow. "You're alive," he whispered fiercely. "That's what matters. Everything else, we'll figure it out." "We?" she asked against his chest. "If you'll let me," he answered. "Not as your benefactor or sponsor or any other business term. Just as someone who loves you and wants to be here, whatever comes." Through the night, Marcus remained at her bedside. They talked, really talked, for the first time since their relationship began. He spoke of his childhood fears of inadequacy, how wealth became his shield against vulnerability. She shared her dreams beyond music, the family she'd always wanted but never prioritized. As dawn approached and nurses prepared Melody for surgery, Marcus had an epiphany that shifted his entire worldview. Watching the woman he loved face mortality, he finally understood what had eluded him for decades. "All my life, I've measured worth in acquisitions and assets," he said, holding her hand as they wheeled her toward the operating room. "But real wealth isn't in boardrooms or bank accounts. It's in moments like this, being present when someone needs you, loving without conditions or contracts." Melody squeezed his hand weakly, preoperative medications making her drowsy. "Stay," she murmured. "Always," he promised, meaning it with every fiber of his being. As the surgical doors closed between them, Marcus Sterling stood alone in the corridor, his designer suit rumpled, his carefully maintained composure shattered. For the first time in 30 years, he prayed, not for business success or financial gain, but for the life of the woman who had taught him what truly mattered. In that sterile hallway, amidst the controlled chaos of hospital routine, the billionaire CEO finally understood the difference between price and value, between possession and love, between existing and truly living. My dear family, let's pause here briefly and reflect. You know, sometimes life takes away the very thing we desire most. Has there ever been such a moment in your own life when losing something helped you realize what truly mattered? When the universe removed a dream only to reveal a deeper truth about love and priority? Like this video if you've experienced that profound realization where loss became your greatest teacher. Share in the comments below what that loss taught you about what's truly valuable in life. Your wisdom might be the comfort another viewer needs today. Remember, we grow stronger together through our shared experiences. Now, let's continue with Marcus and Melody's journey. The 6-hour surgery felt like an eternity to Marcus. He paced the waiting room, ignoring the uncomfortable chairs and curious glances from staff who'd never seen their CEO so disheveled. When Dr. Anderson finally emerged, her tired smile brought the first real breath he'd taken all morning. "The surgery went well," she announced. "We removed the tumor and affected tissue. The cancer hadn't spread as far as we feared." "Can I see her?" Marcus asked immediately. "She'll be in recovery for a few hours, but yes, you can sit with her." For the next 5 days, Marcus became a permanent fixture in Melody's hospital room. He cancelled meetings, delegated authority with unprecedented trust, and learned to navigate the uncomfortable fold-out chair that became his bed. Nurses grew accustomed to finding the billionaire CEO helping Melody sip water, adjusting her pillows, or simply holding her hand through waves of post-operative pain. On the 3rd day, as afternoon sunlight filled the room, Melody finally felt strong enough for the conversation they both knew was coming. "You've barely left," she observed, watching him rearrange flowers sent by the pediatric staff. "Your empire must be wondering where you've gone." Marcus set down the vase and returned to her bedside. "My empire runs itself. I built it that way." He took her hand gently. I've spent 3 days thinking about what I really want to say to you. And what's that? Melody asked softly. It was never about having a child, he confessed, his voice raw with honesty. Not really. It was about not being alone anymore. About creating something meaningful with someone who matters. Tears welled in Melody's eyes. But you talked about legacy, about continuing your line. Because I didn't understand what legacy truly means, Marcus interrupted. Legacy isn't about DNA or surnames on buildings. It's about the lives we touch, the love we share, the difference we make. You taught me that. Over the following days, as Melody grew stronger, their conversations deepened. They talked about family in all its forms, the children they helped heal, the communities they could impact together, the love that transcends biology. I always dreamed of being a mother, Melody admitted one evening. But maybe motherhood isn't just about giving birth. Maybe it's about nurturing, guiding, loving, things I already do every day. And maybe fatherhood, Marcus added, isn't about genetics but about showing up, being present, caring deeply. Things I'm learning to do because of you. As Melody prepared for discharge, Marcus made another confession. I've liquidated some assets, he said casually, as if discussing the weather. Why? Melody asked, alarmed. Because I realized money only has value when it serves love, not when it substitutes for it. He pulled out architectural plans. I'm funding pediatric music therapy programs in 20 hospitals across the country. Not as a transaction or trade, but because it's the right thing to do. Marcus. Melody began, overwhelmed. No conditions, no expectations, he assured her. Just using wealth for what matters. The day before her release, Marcus arranged for a special dinner in her room. As the sun set over Boston, painting the sky in brilliant hues, he knelt beside her bed. Melody Jenkins, he began, his voice trembling slightly, I came into your life as a man who knew the price of everything but the value of nothing. You've taught me about courage, compassion, and connection. Would you help me continue learning? Would you marry me? The ring he offered was simple, a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds, chosen because pearls form through adversity, becoming beautiful through challenge. Yes, Melody whispered, tears flowing freely. Yes to all of it, the learning, the growing, the loving. 3 months later, on a perfect autumn day, the hospital garden transformed into a wedding venue. The ceremony was intimate but filled with meaning. Pediatric patients in wheelchairs lined the aisle, tossing flower petals. Doctors and nurses filled the seats, tissues at the ready. Lewis's parents attended, representing the bittersweet connections that had brought Marcus and Melody together. Marcus had wanted to rent out the Boston Symphony Hall, hire celebrity musicians, create a spectacular event. But Melody convinced him that their love story belonged here, where it began, surrounded by those whose lives they'd touched. As they exchanged vows under an arbor of autumn leaves, Marcus spoke from his heart, I promise to measure wealth not in dollars but in moments shared, to value connection over acquisition, and to love you not for what you can give me, but for who you are. Melody responded, I promise to see you fully, not as CEO or benefactor, but as the man who learned to kneel beside hospital beds and hold small hands with gentleness. I promise to build a family with you in all the ways that matter most. Their first dance wasn't to a professional orchestra but to a recording made by the children's music therapy group, imperfect, beautiful, and filled with joy. As they swayed together, surrounded by their unconventional family of patients and caregivers, both knew they'd found something rarer than wealth or conventional dreams. They'd found home in each other, built not on conditions or transactions, but on the solid foundation of love learned through loss, strengthened through struggle, and deepened through truth. 6 months into their marriage, Marcus and Melody had settled into a rhythm of shared purpose. The music therapy program had expanded nationally, and their partnership, both personal and professional, flourished. Yet neither expected the phone call that would transform their lives completely. Melody. Dr. Levine's voice was heavy with sorrow. It's about Lucy Martinez. Melody's heart clenched. Lucy, a spirited 8-year-old with leukemia, had been one of her first patients, the girl who'd taught her that music could reach places medicine couldn't touch. She passed away early this morning, Dr. Levine continued. But there's something else. Her mother, Carmen, is asking to see you both. It's urgent. An hour later, Marcus and Melody sat in a modest living room across from Carmen Martinez, whose own battle with stage 4 breast cancer was evident in her frail appearance. Photos of Lucy decorated every surface, Lucy playing piano at her recital, Lucy in a hospital bed surrounded by instruments, Lucy beaming at her music therapy graduation. "Thank you for coming," Carmen said, her voice weak but determined. "Lucy talked about you constantly. She called you her music mama and Mr. Sterling her gentle giant." Melody wiped away tears while Marcus reached for her hand. "I don't have much time left," Carmen continued with devastating directness. "The doctors say weeks, maybe a month." She gestured to a bassinet in the corner where a baby slept peacefully. "This is Harmony, Lucy's sister. She's 3 months old." Carmen's eyes met theirs with fierce determination. "I've watched you both with children. I've seen how you loved Lucy and the others. There's no other family. Their father left when I was diagnosed." She took a shuddering breath. "Would you consider becoming Harmony's guardians?" "Lucy made me promise to ask you. She said Harmony would need special people who understand that love makes a family, not blood." The request stunned them into silence. Marcus recovered first, moving to kneel beside Carmen's chair. "May we meet her properly?" he asked softly. Carmen nodded, tears flowing freely as Marcus carefully lifted the sleeping infant. Harmony stirred, opening eyes that were startlingly like Lucy's. She gazed up at Marcus with innocent trust, one tiny hand reaching for his face. Something profound shifted in that moment. Marcus, who had once measured worth in acquisitions, felt his heart expand with a love that defied calculation. Melody joined him, and Harmony's other hand found her finger, gripping with surprising strength. "She knows," Carmen whispered. "Lucy always said babies can sense good hearts." Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus and Melody spent every possible moment with Carmen and Harmony, learning the baby's routines, hearing stories about Lucy, and preparing for the profound responsibility ahead. They consulted lawyers, arranged paperwork, and transformed their lives to welcome this unexpected blessing. Carmen's final days were spent in hospice, surrounded by photos of her daughters. Marcus ensured she had the best care possible, while Melody brought music to ease her journey. In her last conscious moments, Carmen pressed a small box into Melody's hands. "Lucy's first music box," she explained weakly. She wanted Harmony to have it, along with parents who'd teach her to dance to its melody. After Carmen's passing, the adoption process moved swiftly. Marcus, once focused solely on building a business legacy, now channeled his resources into creating the Carmen and Lucy Martinez Foundation, supporting children who'd lost parents to illness and ensuring they found loving homes. The day they brought Harmony home, their penthouse, once a sterile showcase of success, resonated with new life. Marcus had transformed his office into a nursery, personally selecting each item with the attention he once reserved for million-dollar deals. Melody created a musical mobile featuring tiny instruments that played Lucy's favorite lullaby. "We're really doing this," Melody marveled, watching Marcus expertly prepare a bottle, skills he'd learned with characteristic thoroughness. "We're really doing this," he confirmed, cradling Harmony with a gentleness that still surprised those who knew him only as a ruthless businessman. Months passed, and Harmony thrived. The foundation grew, helping dozens of children find families. Marcus discovered that board meetings paled in comparison to Harmony's first smile, her first giggle, the way she clapped when Melody played piano. On Harmony's first birthday, they held a celebration in the hospital garden where they'd married. Staff members who'd watched their journey from that first chance encounter to this moment of joy gathered to celebrate. As afternoon light filtered through the trees, they set Harmony down amid a circle of child-friendly instruments. Without hesitation, she crawled to a small drum, patting it with uncoordinated enthusiasm that somehow created its own rhythm. Marcus and Melody sat close together, watching their daughter discover music for the first time. The circle felt complete, not the family Marcus had once envisioned in his narrow definition of legacy, but something far richer. "She has Lucy's spirit," Melody observed, her voice thick with emotion. "And Carmen's strength," Marcus added. "And somehow, she's entirely herself." Harmony looked up at them, beaming with pure joy as she banged the drum with increasing confidence. In that moment, surrounded by the improvised symphony of their unconventional family, Marcus understood what he'd truly been searching for all along. Love hadn't come in the form he'd expected or demanded. Instead, it arrived through loss and acceptance, through opening his heart to possibilities beyond his control. As Harmony's laughter mixed with the percussion of her tiny hands, Marcus realized that the greatest acquisitions can't be negotiated or purchased, they can only be received with gratitude and held with tender care. Their family, formed not through biology but through the mysterious mathematics of love, represented the most successful merger of Marcus Sterling's life, one that measured returns not in dollars, but in moments of perfect harmony. True wealth, Marcus Sterling learned, cannot be measured in market shares or property holdings. It reveals itself in quiet moments, a baby's first laugh, a shared glance over breakfast, the weight of trust when small arms reach for you in the dark. His empire of concrete and steel still stood tall against Boston's skyline, but its meaning had fundamentally shifted. The great irony of Marcus's life was that in losing what he thought he wanted most, biological fatherhood, he gained something far more precious. His desperate proposition to Melody, born from decades of longing, had nearly cost him everything. Yet through that pain, through Melody's illness and their shared grief, emerged a love more profound than any he'd imagined possible. Melody's journey mirrored his own. The concert hall she once dreamed of commanding gave way to hospital rooms where her music healed broken spirits. The children she thought she'd never have arrived not through birth, but through bonds forged in love and loss. Her greatest compositions weren't performed for critics but created in collaboration with resilient young souls fighting for tomorrow. Together, they discovered that family isn't defined by genetics or legal documents, but by showing up day after day, choosing love over convenience, presence over perfection. Harmony entered their lives not as a consolation prize for what they couldn't have, but as a gift they couldn't have anticipated, a testament to Lucy's wisdom that sometimes the families we need find us when we stop searching. The foundation they established grew beyond supporting grieving children. It became a movement challenging society's narrow definition of family, wealth, and success. Marcus's boardroom skills, once used solely for profit, now served a higher purpose. Melody's healing music reached thousands through their programs. As evening fell over Boston, the Sterling Jenkins household filled with an impromptu concert. Marcus, who once claimed he couldn't play, now kept steady rhythm on a simple shaker. Melody's fingers danced across piano keys, weaving melodies that spoke of journey and homecoming. Between them, Harmony contributed enthusiastic drum beats on her toy percussion set, her face alight with the same joy that had characterized her sister Lucy. In this imperfect symphony, they found perfection. No merger in Marcus's career, no flawless performance in Melody's past, could match the beauty of this moment. Their legacy wouldn't be measured in buildings or accolades, but in the lives touched, the definitions expanded, and the love multiplied through their willingness to embrace life's unexpected harmonies. Sometimes the greatest empires are built not from ambition, but from acceptance, not from control, but from surrender to love's deeper wisdom. My beloved family, as we draw to a close Marcus and Melody's journey, I'm reminded that the most beautiful families often form in ways we never expected. Their story teaches us that sometimes life must take away our original dreams to make room for blessings we couldn't have imagined. Family isn't always what we expect it to be, but it's where we find our greatest treasure. So tell me, have you ever had someone unexpected become family to you? Please share your story in the comments. Whether it's a friend who became a sister, a mentor who became a parent figure, or a child who entered your life through unexpected circumstances, your experience might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. If this journey touched your heart, please subscribe to join our community of storytellers and hit the notification bell to never miss a new story. Every day, we explore the profound ways love shapes our lives, and your presence here makes this family complete. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that family comes in many forms. Perhaps they're struggling with infertility, facing loss, or questioning whether their non-traditional family is real enough. Let them know they're not alone. To those of you who've been with us from the beginning, thank you for your faithfulness. To those just joining, welcome home. Your comments, likes, and shares don't just support this channel, they create a space where stories of hope can flourish. Until next time, remember that the greatest empire you can build is one of love. It may not appear on any Fortune 500 list, but its dividends are immeasurable. May your own story be filled with unexpected blessings, chosen family, and love that transcends all boundaries. Stay blessed, stay loved, and I'll see you in our next story.